Look, I'm not here just to throw information at you. I'm here to help you train smarter, live stronger, and perform longer. This is where we talk about what it really takes to build capacity that lasts in the gym and in life. Welcome back to the Longevity Performance Podcast, where we break down training, performance, and purpose so you can build a body that lasts a lifetime. Every athlete and performer eventually hits a point where what used to work stops working, where the same effort delivers less return, where the process feels solid but progress slows down. That's not failure, but it's physiology, because every system adapts to the exact demands that you place on it. And once those demands stop changing, so does your growth. That's where the laws of specificity and accommodation come in. The two principles that explain why every athlete, no matter how skilled or experienced, eventually hits a wall. Specificity builds skill. It's how your body learns precision, power, and control. But when precision becomes confinement, you lose adaptability. And when you stop adapting, you stop progressing. That's where accommodation steps in. The body gets efficient, then complacent. It stops responding to the same stress that once sparked growth. The athletes who last, or at least the ones that perform for decades and not just seasons, understand mastery isn't about repeating the same thing that works. It's about learning how to evolve it. That's the intersection we're breaking down today, where precision meets adaptability and where structure fuels evolution, where performance becomes something you can sustain for life. The body only learns what it practices. When you train, your body learns exactly what you teach it. Every lift, sprint, and repetition is data, and your system adapts to that input. That's the law of specificity. The body adapts specifically to the demands that are placed on it. If you lift heavy, you build neural efficiency and maximal strength. If you sprint often, you improve speed, power, and the rate of force development. If you repeat the same movement patterns, your coordination within the pattern becomes more efficient. That's the foundation of performance, and it's how skills develop. But it's also why so many athletes eventually hit a wall. The same process that creates precision can narrow your adaptability. A pitcher who only throws becomes limited in other planes of motion. A powerlifter who only squats and benches loses elasticity and movement variability. An endurance athlete who only trains long distances loses that ability to produce force under load. It's the same in strength work. If you straight bar squat for 8 weeks in a row, did you actually get stronger or did you get better at that specific version of the squat? Now let's flip it around and say you rotate through different squat and deadlift variations for 8 weeks. And then your straight bar squat improves. So did you get better at the squat or did you get stronger overall? That's the difference between specific skill and general capability. Both matter, but only one builds longevity. At Agoge Performance, we look at specificity as a tool and not a cage. It's how you direct adaptation and not how you define yourself as an athlete. So before you specialize, you need range, the ability to move, stabilize, and produce force across different positions and speeds. That range is what keeps the system adaptable when conditions change. High performance isn't about doing one thing better forever. It's about developing a system strong and versatile enough to keep improving the thing that matters most. The best athletes don't practice their sport. They build the structure that allows them to express it under pressure, fatigue, and change. That's what keeps them durable and consistent over time. Specificity builds skill, adaptability sustains it. And the athletes who understand both, who know when to narrow and when to expand, are the ones who stay at the top the longest. Every adaptation has a limit. The longer you expose your body to the same stress, the smaller the returns become. That's the law of accommodation. The body's natural tendency to stop adapting to a repeated stimulus. Over time, your system becomes efficient. It learns how to manage the stress you've been applying, but once it's mastered that demand, the signal for adaptation fades. At first, that efficiency looks like progress, you move cleaner, the weight feels familiar, and your recovery improves. But eventually, the same training stops producing new results. You're still working hard, but the work no longer creates change. It's not a sign of failure, it's just the system is doing what it was designed to do, which is conserve. When the input stays the same, the output stabilizes. That principle extends beyond to just physical training. Accommodation happens mentally and emotionally as well. I once had a lifter who believed he needed a full setup to get ready for max effort work, between smelling salts, belt, same music, the same sequence before every heavy lift. He wasn't doing it for show, but he thought that's what it took for him to perform. Those tools gave him a feeling of readiness, so he relied on them. But over time, that dependency caught up with him. He couldn't perform without them, and that external setup became part of his strength instead of part of his strength being his own. So I pulled it back. No salts, music, hype, just him and the bar with his intent. He didn't love it at first, and most people don't when they get their comfort gets disrupted. But that change forced him to build internal control. He had to learn how to turn his focus on without noise, and that's where the real progress started. He got stronger, but more importantly, he became consistent. That's what happens when you stop accommodating to your environment and start adapting within it. Progress doesn't require constant change, it requires intentional change. Adjusting the stress before the system dulls its response. Adaptation isn't permanent. If you want to keep evolving, your training and your mindset have to keep evolving as well. Specificity and accommodation work together. One drives adaptation, and the other limits it. Specificity gives structure and direction, while accommodation keeps that structure from being abused. They're not opposites, they're merely checks and balances within the same system. Specificity says adapt here, while accommodation says not forever. Ultimately, you need both. Without specificity, there's no focus, no precision in how strength or skill is developed. Without accommodation, the system would burn out trying to adapt endlessly to the same stress. That's why great programming lives between the two. You have to stay specific enough to build skill, but variable enough to stay adaptable. Too much of either, and you lose progress in different ways. An athlete who trains too specifically doesn't just get narrow, they start to lose capacity outside their trained pattern. The nervous system becomes so efficient in one groove that it stops maintaining the qualities that protect it, whether that's joint variability, connective tissue tolerance, and even structural balance. That's not just a lifter problem, it's a coaching problem. Across both sport and strength culture, most coaches overspecify. They chase precision year-round, the same movements, same intensities, and same patterns. Then they act surprised when the body breaks down under repetition. It's why we see so many overuse injuries in high-skill sports. So you got Tommy Johns in baseball pitchers, rotator cuff breakdowns in swimmers, and then patellar tendinopathy in volleyball players, and lastly, stress fractures in distance runners. The system didn't fail, it adapted it exactly to what it was told to. It just ran out of options. That's what overspecificity does. It hardens skill, but it weakens adaptability. The athlete becomes brilliant at one solution, but terrible at finding new ones. On the other hand, an athlete who trains too variably never gives the body enough repetition to anchor adaptation. They introduce stress without structure, lots of exposure, but no mastery. They never consolidate skill into a usable performance. The balance between the two is where sustainable performance lives. Precise enough to target, but broad enough to evolve. That's the logic behind conjugate training. Rotating stressors, whether that's bars, angles, or tempos, keeps the body responsive without losing direction. It's not random variation, it's just organized adaptation. The best athletes and the best coaches live in the middle space. They train to maintain precision under changing conditions instead of chasing perfect ones. That's how you build capability that lasts. Adaptable, durable, and ready for whenever the game demands. The real challenge isn't understanding these laws, but it's simply applying them. Because knowing why adaptation slows down means nothing if you can't build a system that keeps it alive. At Agoge Performance, we use structure to keep stress evolving without losing direction. The goal isn't to constantly change everything, it's to rotate stress just enough so that the body keeps learning while the skill stays anchored. That's what intelligent programming looks like. It's not chaos, but it's controlled variability. Within a calendar year, we never repeat the same exact workout from start to finish. Some elements may feel familiar, but it's very different. That's the single principle is what keeps our system responsive. The body never has a chance to coast because the signal is always slightly different. A new angle, a new pace, a new way of applying effort. That's the difference between variation and randomness. Variation has purpose, while randomness has no direction. By changing the shape of the work without changing its goal, you keep specificity alive and accommodation in check. You're teaching the system to solve the same problem under different constraints. The conjugate framework is the model we use to control that balance. Max effort work drives neural efficiency and absolute force production. It's your ceiling. Dynamic effort work maintains bar speed coordination and the rate at which you can access that strength. Together, they create alternating stress, one heavy, one fast, but both are specific, both are adaptive, and each session builds on the other without ever being identical. The body stays engaged, learning to express different strength in different ways instead of repeating output by memory. Accessory training follows the same logic. We don't recycle movements simply because they're comfortable and familiar. The accessory work exists to target weak links, reinforce structure, and challenge what isn't adapting. That can mean rotating loading methods, bilateral one week, unilateral the next. It could be manipulating tempo, range, or even stability. You don't need a dozen new exercises. You need consistent stimulus with involving intent. Every accessory should answer a question. What part of the system needs to adapt next? That's how you extend longevity, by continually refining what supports the main lift, not just repeating what already works. For athletes, the same principles apply. Specificity is a skill that's critical, but over specificity erodes resilience. So we vary how you prepare, not why. A pitcher trains both rotation and anti-rotation. A sprinter trains acceleration and controlled deceleration. A field athlete trains power and the ability to express it from an awkward or reactive positions. The goal is a system that can handle variability without losing precision. That's what separates an athlete who lasts from one who peaks early. Programming against accommodation isn't about constant novelty, it's about controlled progression. Every change should have intent. Every rotation has a reason. We don't change for entertainment, but we change to stay adaptive. The input always evolves. The purpose never does. That's how you build performance that lasts. Adaptive, resilient, and repeatable. Adaptation isn't a mystery. Your body shows you exactly where it stands every week. The problem is most lifters and athletes don't know how to read the signals, and that's normal. They chase numbers or emotion, but they ignore their physiology. When you train long enough, the body becomes very predictable. You start to understand your nervous system, your muscles, and your connective tissue, and how they react to different forms of stress. That awareness is what separates training hard from training intelligently. The laws of specificity and accommodation show up long before a plateau ever does, if you know where to look. When training is driving the right kind of adaptation, everything in the system trends towards efficiency and readiness. You feel more stable under load, not looser, not tighter, but just organized. The bar moves faster at submaximal weights, even without more effort. You finish sessions feeling energized instead of drained. Sleep and appetite stay consistent, recovery feels natural, and when you wake up ready to train, not negotiating with yourself to get moving. You'll notice that your joints feel a lot better as well. Tendons and connective tissue adapt slower than muscle. but when stress and recovery align, they start to feel more resilient, less noisy, and less inflamed. Movement feels cleaner even when fatigue sets in. That's the sign of productive adaptation. The system is handling the stress and coming back stronger in between exposures. When you've stayed too specific for too long, those signs flip. At first, it's subtle. Loads that used to move easily start feeling heavier, not because your strength is gone, but because your nervous system is dulling to its response. The bar speed slows, coordination tightens, and timing feels completely off. The system isn't failing, it's adapting too specifically. You've trained one pattern so repeatedly that the nervous system has stopped recruiting outside of it. You're strong in one gear, but you're underdeveloped everywhere else. Then the body starts to compensate. Small aches show up in predictable places, whether that's your elbows, your knees, your shoulders, or your low back. They're not random, they're structural signals. It means the tissues supporting those primary patterns are overloaded while everything else is undertrained. You might also notice a shift in how the muscles feel. They'll probably be less dense, less responsive, almost like they've lost tone. It's not fatigue, it's neural downregulation. When the brain stops seeing a stimulus as novel, it reduces recruitment intensity. You might still be training, but the output isn't the same. And eventually, recovery starts to slip. You sleep, but it's not deep. You eat, but it doesn't hit the same. You show up to train, but you need more warm-up, more hype, and more effort just to hit the same numbers. That's accommodation taking root. The system conserving energy because the demand hasn't changed enough to justify adaptation. Every athlete lives somewhere on the spectrum between adaptation and accommodation. The goal isn't just to stay on one side, it's to know when you're starting to slide too far into either direction. Each part of your system adapts at a different rate, and that timing matters. If your programming doesn't account for it, one part of your system will always lag behind the other. Your nervous system adaptation, it usually takes 2 to 4 weeks. Neural efficiency and motor learning happens really fast. That's why new athletes see rapid strength gains early on. It's because the nervous system learns to coordinate, recruit, and fire more efficiently before the tissues have even caught up. But it also means it plateaus very quickly if the stress doesn't change. Muscle adaptation takes about 6 to 8 weeks. Hypertrophy and muscular endurance develop more gradually. Muscle fibers remodel relatively quickly, but not as fast as the nervous system can adjust. That's why volume phases and repetition work exist, to build the foundation the nervous system can later express through strength. Connective tissue adaptation takes about 12 to 20 weeks. This includes your tendons, ligaments, and fascia, which adapt the slowest because they need consistent, moderate mechanical loading and recovery. That's why we use the prime density method at Agoge Performance and integrate it throughout the year. It's built on controlled volume, low to moderate intensity, and precise repetition continually to reinforce the slow adaptation structures that hold the system together. Connective tissue can't be rushed, but it can be built on consistency. By layering that kind of training across the year, you're always strengthening what takes the longest to adapt, the foundation that lets everything else last. So when you train, you're always managing asynchronous adaptation. Nervous system gets strong fast, the muscles follow at a moderate pace, and then the connective tissue takes months to fully reinforce that strength. That's why a lifter can feel strong but still get hurt. Their neural and muscular systems have adapted faster than their connective tissue can handle. It's why a runner can feel it but start losing muscle tone. The aerobic system adapted, but the structural system lagged behind. Your system isn't lying, it's communicating. And if you understand the timeline of each adaptation, you'll know how to stay one step ahead of accommodation, not by guessing, but planning. The best indicator of progress isn't just the numbers, it's how the system feels while producing them. You should be able to move more heavy weight with coordination, You should be able to recover quickly between sessions and maintain quality across weeks of consistent stress. If you can do that, your programming is working. If every session feels like a grind and you're collecting small injuries along the way, your system isn't weak, it's overspecified. The goal is to build strength that lasts longer than the cycle. That means balancing stimuluses, recovery, and variability so that the system stays responsive and not reactive. At Agoge Performance, that's the measure we care about the most. Not just the number that's on the bar, but the number that costs the system to produce. If you're strong, mobile, and consistent, if your recovery is improving as your performance climbs, that's true adaptation. That's how you know the system is still evolving instead of fighting itself. Because real progress isn't just feeling stronger, it's becoming harder to break. Longevity isn't built purely from big picture planning, it's built from how you train today. Every session is an opportunity to move the system forward or run into the ground. The difference comes down to structure, not just what you do, but the order and intent behind it. Here's how we build a training session that's deliberate, efficient, and built to last. First, we start off with mobility. This shouldn't take any more than 5 to 8 minutes. It's simply here as a means of activation, improving joint access, and bringing the nervous system online. It's not about stretching everything or chasing a sweat. It's about unlocking just enough range to move efficiently. When that's done, you feel connected, stable where you need control, mobile where you need freedom. That's what keeps output high and wear low. From there, we move into prime density work, short, focused sequences that reinforce movement patterns and develop the tissues that hold everything together. Within 8 to 12 minutes, we are trying to move through a few movements, adding up to 100 reps in total. This is where we build tendon stiffness, ligament tolerance, and position integrity. It's not about fatigue, it's about reinforcement. The connective tissues adapt slowly, so we train them constantly. That's why this work really never leaves the program. It's integrated year-round to keep the foundation strong while other variables change. Once the structure is primed, we train the system to produce force more efficiently. This is where max effort and dynamic effort work come in. We don't rotate them in phases, we balance them continuously. They serve different roles, but both drive the same outcome: better coordination between the nervous system and the muscle that expresses it. So max effort work teaches the system to create and maintain tension under heavy load. It's not about chasing failure, but it's about chasing precision at intensity, learning to brace, stay efficient, and express full force safely. Dynamic effort builds the rate at which you can access that strength. Bar speed, timing, and coordination becomes the focus. The load is lighter, but the intent is extremely high. Every rep is a speed strength rep, not a warm-up. We use both because they complement one another. One develops force potential, and the other maintains speed, rhythm, and sharpness. The only time we really pull this back is during our unilateral phase, when single limb work demands lower output to emphasize control, balance, and joint protection. Otherwise, max and dynamic effort methods remain constant in the system, different gears of the same engine. After the main lift, we shift into accessory work, the layer that sustains our progress. This is where we build muscle mass, reinforce stability, and close structural gaps. Accessories target weak links and expand volume tolerance while protecting against overuse by changing angles, planes, and tempos. They're not random, they're built around supporting the primary lifts and maintaining overall balance. This is the durability phase of the session. It's where we reinforce what holds everything else together: muscle quality, range control, and resilience. Each part of the session builds on the one before it. Mobility just simply prepares the system. Prime density fortifies it. The main lift builds neural efficiency and expression. Accessories sustain and protect it. That's how you organize to train for longevity, by organizing stress intelligently instead of reacting to it. You don't wait for exhaustion to tell you when to stop. You manage fatigue before it becomes failure. When every piece of the session has a job, adaptation keeps moving. That's what intelligent training looks like, the kind that lasts. Train with purpose and perform for life. Every session is feedback. Your body is showing you what's working and what's wearing down. If you're paying attention, you can see it before it breaks. That's what longevity really is just awareness. Training hard without losing direction. Building strength that holds up under stress, and not just once, but over time. If you're ready to apply this in the right way, to train with structure, intent, and purpose, you can start with me directly on Train Heroic. That's where this system lives. It's built into every session. Next time we come on this podcast, we'll break down accommodating resistance, how tools like bands and chains reshape the strength curve so you can keep driving adaptation without hitting the wall. Train with purpose and perform for life.